What's going on, guys? Thanks for tuning into the Local Crown podcast, where we're going to teach you how to wage war on your competition and earn your local crown, also known as the top spot on Google. Awesome, man. So you've got a lot of clients that they're used to being able to have these live events, the seminars, in-person coaching, masterminds. How are y'all pivoting since it's a lot harder to do those kinds of things right now and to do more online?
I mean, most of the clients I'm working for have just pivoted to converting their existing events into virtual events like Zoom events. And at least in 2020, they were very successful. And actually, all of my clients had better years in 2020 than they did the year prior. And a lot of that is because they were able to actually attract bigger audiences virtually than they were in person events. And then the bigger the audience, the bigger the exposure, typically the more revenue they're going to generate. And because I think also though that some of the reasons that virtual events were so successful in 2020 was because they were live, they were in there was no other alternative, and people were kind of forced to engage that way. Historically, live events convert better than virtual events. I mean, that's the reason that they weren't widely used beforehand, and it's just that's kind of like historically how the data has looked. So when things reopen, those numbers might shift again. I don't know. It's tough to we can't necessarily predict it. What I do think will become more important in 2021 for these type of businesses is in 2020, you could get away with like basically a Zoom room and a screen share and just like really low production value. I think we're starting to step into where it's going to become expected, and soon it will become mandatory to have much higher production value for your live virtual events. And it's also and in a more immersive experience with like a website. Like if you've heard of the event Traffic and Conversions, which is a digital marketing summit, I attended their virtual event in December, and they had a drop-down menu of every single breakout room. You could pre-register and get calendar reminders automatically. They had this whole thing in such an organized and immersive experience, like no other virtual event I had really been to. I think that will be the model. Eventually, that will be the expected model of how virtual events operate. And for someone to really want to trust, for you to establish the trust and the expertise necessary to secure a big investment from a client that wants to work with you, I think eventually people are going to expect that they're treated to those kind of higher end virtual events if this model is going to stick, which I do think it will. But I also do think that there will be a place for live events because there's a lot of people that just love the experience of being around other people, and they love the experience of going out and networking. They like to travel. They like to have a couple days away from the office and just spend the time at these conferences and networking. So I think there's a place for both. I do think virtual is here to stay. I'm not sure. I'm not sure whether when things go back to normal, if virtual will be primary and the live event will be secondary, or if we'll go back to live events being primary and virtual secondary. So I'm not quite sure how that's going to go. I have a feeling that virtual might actually overtake as the primary driver of events, but it's really going to be something that we'll have to wait and see on to get to officially. But my hunch is that we'll start seeing these hybrid events where there is a live component to it, but the primary promotion and everything else will be to promote the virtual aspect.
Awesome, man. And that's kind of my theory too, because they've been, if I'm not wrong, this last year, Tony Robbins and Dean and them broke the record for like the largest event or something like that with one of their digital summits. So you literally can reach more people on the internet than it is physically possible or ever going to be physically possible to reach in one stadium or one event center.
Yeah. And there's really no limitations to the size of your audience when you're dealing with virtual versus a live event, which is you're limited to the capacity of the room. So most seminar rooms are like kind of ballrooms or half ballrooms. You're going to be capped at anywhere from, depending on how big of a ballroom you rent and how much you're willing to invest in the event. You're capped at like anywhere from 100 to maybe, I'd say 1,000 people in the high end, but a lot of them are capped at maybe 500 people. Um, and there's a big investment to get a ballroom and things like that. So because you're no longer having to make those investments in securing the ballroom, and if you get a good deal on the ballroom, that means that you're guaranteeing a certain amount of hotel rooms and things like that. There's less budget being spent there. So the virtual event, not only are people actually doing just as well, if not better, virtually, but they're also taking on a much less expenses. But I do think that now some of that money that they were saving on not having those expenses is going to have to be reinvested into the experience of the virtual event. Because from my own experience, there were a few events that I even paid for, like $100 to go to a virtual event, and I sat through maybe an hour, and then I just kind of, I just have trouble watching. I have trouble watching virtual events because I get distracted because I just have so much distraction around me. Whereas if I'm in a live, in a live auditorium, I don't have those distractions. There's no other option but me to sit and watch through the whole content and everything. So for me to be engaged, like I was much more engaged with the digital marketing conference, Traffic and Conversions, because of all the different things they did to incentivize people to stay, and they just made it so much more interesting, and it kept my attention. I do think that's going to be necessary for a good chunk of the audience to have success with virtual events. It's investing more budget into either gamifying them or doing whatever you can to make them to make people incentivized to stay, and make people and also limit the distractions around them. But I mean, really, it's just the incentives. Maybe that's just giving out prizes for people that stay. During this 1 hour, 2 hour section, at a random time. I'm not going to tell you when. I'm going to be announcing, or I'm going to be doing a drawing for the like a $300 prize, and only the people that are in the Zoom room at this time will be eligible. So even things like that can incentivize people to be in the room and to pay attention can also work.
Awesome, man. So I want to jump into the next topic, which I want to ask you about what you think the power of podcasting is in this time.
So I think podcasting, the biggest power of it is, I mean, it depends on what your outcome is too, I guess. But for me, the biggest aspect of it was it opened up doors to people that I previously wouldn't have had access to. So which is something that I just said about Clubhouse too. But the Clubhouse has only been around for a month or so, or I've only been on it for a month or two, or not even, just a month. So I think like the biggest impact from podcasting was it gave me access to people like John Lee Dumas and Pat Flynn and Orrin Claff and people that I've looked up to in the business community. And that two, while you're able to interview these people on your show, you can then ask them questions that you have yourself about business, and you're in essence you're getting free consultation or free consulting while you're interviewing them and providing value for your audience. So you're getting, if you were going to work with someone like a Pat Flynn or something, I'm sure it's going to cost you for 8 hours of his time. A lot of these guys will sell VIP days that go from anywhere from $10,000 to $25,000 for a single private VIP day with them, and you're getting an hour of their time for free by just interviewing them on the show. So to me that's a huge value add. You're able to get basically consulting for your business that way, and then three, you're increasing your perceived authority as an expert by being in association with those people. So the fact that you have a podcast, a platform, and two, that you're interviewing big names on the show, it makes people look at you differently. So there's like this thing of it's mostly psychological, but it works. It's the way it's perceived authority. So the more somebody perceives you to be an expert, the easier the sales conversation is going to be with them later on, and the more they're going to trust you. And so, like, you've seen this for years with people that attach to celebrities and things like that. It's a way of building this unconscious trust and authority, and the reason that it works is just the way that our brains are wired. So it doesn't necessarily, just because I had John Lee Dumas on the show 2 years ago doesn't make me more of an expert, but be just the way that our brains work, I'm now associated with him because he was on the podcast,
Yep.
and it creates that perception, which can be leveraged for to make sales conversations easier and for people to trust you more, which is necessary because you want your audience to know, like, and trust you for them to later make a purchase from you.
Awesome, man. So you've been hosting the Marketing Geek Show for a while now, and you've had some pretty incredible guests on. Can you give me like one thing that you learned interviewing these people that just absolutely blew your mind?
Trying to think of one thing here. I mean, I've learned a lot over time, and some of these, some of the people we've had on have just dropped like incredible value bombs. I'm trying to think of like something that really left a massive impact on me. Man, I try to think who we just had on. Give me. Let me come back to that question. Do you have another question? I can come back to that. And so let me think about that for a second here, because I wanna give a decent answer, but I don't have I don't have a pre-prepared answer or anything on that one. So
100%, man. So my next question was going to be, what are you investing in? My audience has been wanting to know, everybody I bring on, what are these people investing in? What are they putting their money in so that they have
yeah.
some certainty?
Well, last year in March when the market crashed, I threw everything I had into the stock market, so I did quite well with that. And not all of my investments were sound, but everything went up after March in 2020. And so if you had in the market, you were making money in the long if you kept it in there. And so I this year it's a little bit different though, because I'm watching the market, and I'm watching, like, as we're recording this is right in the middle of this like market manipulation thing with the Reddit communities and GameStop and a couple of these other companies, like it was Naked Brands, GameStop, and a few of these companies are kind of being you have your retail traders coming together for the first time to stick it to these Wall Street short sellers, and which is amusing to watch, but it's also a sign that when you can see like how a group of traders can come together and impact the price of a stock so dramatically. Like GameStop, for instance, was trading in March 2020 after the crash at about $2 or $3 per share, is now trading at, as of today, around $400 plus, and 2 weeks ago was trading at $20 a share, and now it's trading at $400 plus. You see the power of like these groups coming together, but it also, to me, is a sign that there's a lot of stocks that are just propped up on group investments. And you could make an argument about a company like Tesla, but the counter argument to Tesla, that one's an interesting one, because Tesla has so much utility value because of the technology that they create and the service they provide to human beings as a whole. There could be an argument for their valuation, but when you look at things like by the numbers, like the price of the Tesla stock by the numbers makes absolutely no sense. And so there's a lot of companies that are like Tesla that don't necessarily, that where they have these inflated stock values that don't necessarily correlate to their actual earnings and their actual growth potential. And so I do think there's going to be a big market pop this year. I could be totally wrong. I've been wrong a lot about this stuff. But so I'm moving, my investments this year are in Bitcoin, Ethereum, gold, silver, and then a few value stocks that I think have had, like, even a stock like Amazon is only up like 30% in all of 2020. Like, that's a stock where I think that it didn't get overinflated. I think that's still a fair valued stock that has a ton of growth potential, because I think Amazon is just a massive player. I think a stock like Microsoft, there's a few companies that I think will do fine. I do think that there are some companies that are trading just at too high of valuations that are going to see huge, massive corrections. So right now, that's where my mindset is. I could be totally wrong. I'm not. I don't take what I'm saying as any investment advice. I am not a certified financial person. But that's where I'm putting my money, is gold, silver, Bitcoin, and Ethereum. That's what and I'm looking at getting more into real estate investments also. So that would be another one. But I'm not currently in real estate, so other than I own my own home, but I don't have rental properties. So those are the areas where I'm looking to put my money this year, right now, as we're talking.
Awesome, man. So my last question is just going to be, at this point, you've dropped so many bombs on us. Just what's the best way for people to see more of you and get more involved with you? And if you got that lesson from the marketing geeks, I'd love for you to share it as well.
Yeah. So the best way, subscribe, listen to the show, Marketing Geeks. We're on every single platform, Apple, Spotify, and we're also on things like Pandora, and now we're on Amazon Music and Amazon Audible. So you can listen to us on any of the major platforms. We typically release an episode every single week, although this last month we've had so much going on that we have a little gap there, but we'll get things back on track. Listen to that show. I think it's a great show. We have some of the top minds in marketing, and we keep things very conversational. I feel like it's a little bit different than some podcasts that are more scripted. Like this show's not, but I mean, like some shows out there are just too scripted for my taste. I like dynamic conversations. I like letting things go where they may. I like occasionally going on tangents, but not you want to stay on the main topic at hand, but occasional tangent here and there makes things fun. So yeah, listen to the show. You can connect with me on Instagram or on Facebook. So Justin Womack, I'm the guy with the white hat. That's the easy one on the picture. and then for the marketing lesson, I guess I think the one that is kind of like coming to me more, I guess it's more of like an aggregate lesson, I guess, but it's after like meeting with so many people that have been on the Inc. 5000 or have grown 7, 8, 9-figure businesses. I guess the overall lesson is to really weather when you're as an entrepreneur, like oftentimes you're going to reach these kind of like turning points where you'll probably question whether or not you're going to continue as an entrepreneur, and you'll question whether to give it up or keep going or these kind of things, and you won't even know you don't even know how you're going to maybe even pay next month's expenses. And a lot of times when that happens, that's like at this prefaces point, or we'll call it this. It's at this turning point where this precedes like a huge jump in your business. It often precedes a huge directional shift, and if you can weather those moments and weather those hard times, a lot more entrepreneurs will succeed. The average, the numbers that we hear about are like 80% of businesses, or I forget the number off the top of my head, fail within the first 5 years. But if you could survive those hard times and find a way to keep things moving, it's often much smoother sailing on the back end of it. And that's been my experience as well. And I've heard that kind of as a recurring theme from people that now running massive companies, where it wasn't always a sure thing that this was even going to work, and now some of them are making $1 million more per month. And like the big shift, or the thing that I just keep that sticks with me, is that when things are their hardest, it's usually what precedes the biggest breakthrough for a business.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It was an honor interviewing me, and honestly, I know that my audience is going to love it.
Yeah, and we do have the website marketinggeekspodcast.com, or I have my website jmackmedia.com, which is JMACK media.com. So you can find me there. And again, LinkedIn. I spend my most time on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram on the social media sites. So feel free to connect with me.
Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you learned something. If you have questions, email us at info@thelocalcrown.com. And if you want to get featured in our publication, Inside the Empire, alongside John Lee Dumas, the entrepreneur on fire, Jayson Waller, the CEO of Power Home Solar, Sharon Lechter, Dan Caldwell, the man that started Tap Out, and the limitless man himself, Jim Kwik, for free? Then head over to thelocalcrown.com/become a contributor.